Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 13, Week 6 Power Rankings. We're far enough into the season that we even have some playoff spots clinched up, and boy, do the power rankings get tighter and tighter every week. Didn't think this was possible, but here we are. I'm your host, IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant, and as always, I'm joined by SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
Well, let's get this kicking off with some last-moment trades here right before the trade deadline, and boy, were these a couple of doozies. This one, definitely. So, the Route 1 Burbs acquiring Roaring Moon from the Illyria Electabuzz for 2 horses, Mew and Mudsdale. The Roaring Moon sure was a hotly discussed item, and when the Electabuzz finally jumped in the auction, they got their second Dark Dragon type. Probably made it a little easy to convince them to let go of it, especially for the Burbs who are collecting a full-on Sun team. That's a pretty good mod there, Steve.
Yeah, it's a great mon. Fits their team really well. The Tier 1 threats of the physical Roaring Moon with the special Walking Wake are a great 1-2 punch, assuming the opposing team doesn't have any fairy types. But yeah, great trade for the Burbs. For the Electabuzz, it's a little questionable. Of course, they bid heavily on the Moon. They didn't bid on Mew at all. It was taken for 1 Whoop Buck. It just seems like I assume the Burbs convinced the Electabuzz, and the Electabuzz, who are kind of we'll talk about that in a moment. They decided to share, why not? And the Burbs got their centerpiece to really help out their Sun core.
And why not for 2 horses? I mean, come on, why not? And of course, here in the wake of the finishing auction, we had one more move here: the Corviknight acquiring the Rotom Mow from the Wooper Troopers, who were just going to be dropping it anyway. So why not give up 5 Whoop Bucks for the Rotom for me? One more than the signing bonus there, too. So, pretty good deal for the Corviknight. Man, I love the Rotom forms. Greg adding on the Rotom Mow. Sheesh, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, a great pickup. The Rotoms are definitely great mons. They all have Levitate, which is huge, especially as a lot of them are able to Terra. Just Electric Grass is very nice typing. And, the Rotoms are always great mons to have. Picking it up relatively cheap. Just offsetting the signing bonus and paying 1 on top of it. Pretty good trade for both sides.
Absolutely, and we'll see how much impact these mods had in their first week with their new teams. We're going to go right into the auctions then here, and boy, were there some weird moves going on around here. Boy, Steve, we thought we had it figured out, but no, we did not. Route 1 Burbs, oh my goodness, they're not picking up anything, no more moves, just the 1 trade? Well, they're saving it for something big, we'll see that later. Music City Mudkips picking up the Tinglu for 11, just trading out ground types, trading out the Landorus they got earlier for Tinglu for 11. Wooper Troopers with a couple of nice pickups of dark types, Noivern not doing anything for them, so they'll pick up the T-Tar. So was the Weavile for 15, just a last moment snipe there on something else, getting rid of the Rotom Mow in the trade. Steamrollers, Boulders, Electabuzz, Kinglers, and Incineroar all sitting out. That's kind of crazy. We'll get to that in a moment too. The Clobbers, maybe overpaying for Klefki, I don't know. It seems like this league really likes the Klefki. So Klefki for 20 in favor of the Cleavor. We'll see a lot of past forms falling out there in a moment. The Newport Noctowl's picking up a couple mons here too to replace a couple of their lower tier mons. Toxtricity coming in for 5. I love that, dropping Raichu. Lycanroc midday for 21 points. Boy, were there some crazy auctions here, dropping the Frogadier. Aggron's trading out Poison Tier 1's Iron Moth coming in, a Gengar that they acquired in a trade going out. Calgary Corviknights also grabbing a couple new mods here too. Breloom is out, which is kind of crazy, but look at the Skeledirge coming in for only 5. That's a nice deal. And Tatsugiri in over Colossal as the spinner, already a little bit heavy on rock type, so that makes some sense right there, especially getting in the fire type Skeledirge. Buffalo Bouffalant trading out a couple of mods here too. The Hisuian's O'Rourke out for Excalibur in for 13. Got a little bit of Snowcore there. And Hisuian Braviary out. Just could not find a way for it to work. In is the Gardevoir for 9. And finally, Waterdeep Wobbuffets. Is that a 30 for a Tier 5 mod there, Steve? Hisuian Electrode for 30 out is Lycanroc. Wow, that's kind of crazy. Steve, it's a little bit of a sparse list, but boy, the mods that did go, there are some big numbers here. Tell us about Week 6.
Yeah, Week 6 is definitely something I've been waiting for. We kind of talked about last week in Week 5 how the prices started going back up and we were hitting some good numbers. And Week 6, highest averages so far. We're talking about, the Tier 1s that went going for, 11, 13, and 10, all those going for quite high, as well as, some key bids in the lower tiers, a Tier 2 going for 20, a Tier 3 for 15, a Tier 4 for 21, and of course a Tier 5 for 30. Big moves. We're kind of getting, towards the end of the season here with only 2 more auctions after this. So some coaches saying, hey, I like what I got. Let's sell, just sell the money. Get something from it. Get whatever I have my eyes on, might as well lock it up. Overall, just some really good, really exciting auctions going on here. Taking a brief look at some of the mons that were not picked up. At Tier 2, there was the Doug Trio. Again, we've mentioned before how trapping, it does not seem to be something our league really favors. And that's the only reason Doug Trio is this high. Otherwise, it would probably be a Tier 4 or 5. So no one taking that. At Tier 3, Heracross, which is a great mon, but no one had the space for it. Alma Momola as well. Fantastic mon that I know I was certainly looking at. It just did not want another lightning weakness in my mid to high tiers. We had the Quillfish at Tier 4, the Persian Alola, the Berserker, the Zangoose, all those at Tier 4, and then a bunch of Tier 5s, Delibird, Quaxwell, Persian, Hypno, Sawsbuck, and Carkol. Lots of mons on the table. This is, of course, the week that's had the fewest mons go in the auction, with 12 mons. Less than half of those available ended up being taken, but those that did, as mentioned, tended to go for more. So coaches really working on finalizing their teams before the end of the season.
You're really telling me nobody bid on Delibird? Okay, well, I get it. No, that's fine. Yeah, like you said, just folks trying to get those final touches, maybe saving up for that 1 or 2 more big hits left to get as we get 10 a week. Kind of replenish a little bit of our supply here. We're definitely getting at least 10 going into the final week. See if people decide to just go all out for 1 or 2 months in that final week, or if there are any big surprises coming up right before then. Speaking of, we get to lead off a week of surprises with one of our top teams getting beaten by an outsider. Surprise, the parity is coming this quickly, but we'll take it. Here we are. Steve does not like it, though. His Waterdeep Wobbuffets are defeated by the Corviknight Clobbers, grabbing onto that chance they have finally been given with a 2-0 Palafin swapping out first as Klefki takes a chunk from Psychic, but Light Screen set on the Magnezone switch. Switched out, Amoonguss tanks it, but the Spadef drop is brutal. But the red card forcing in Armarouge, Terra Fairy, Spore goes right into the Magnezone that came right back out with the safety goggles. Brutal, but some neat item choices so far. Garchomp gets up rocks and Klefki in as Enamorus starts setting up. Does T-Wave matter? Does Light Screen matter? It will when Amoonguss comes in and removes all the stat changes with Clear Smog. Brutal for Steve to see who has to switch with it low. Garchomp getting chunked by Magnezone. Brambleghast tanks the EQ and gets up a Leech Seed as Chomp Dragon Tails it out, then swap into Enamorus Decay with the passive damage, and then Palafin grabs the revenge there. Brambleghast the switch into Amoonguss after Magnezone Volt switches out, trying to heal up with Strength Set, but Sludge Bomb and the Poison doing more, so it'll at least spin away the rocks with Gaptos avenging the Amoonguss. Nice back and forth going on here. Klefki gets up Light Screen one more time, but Armarouge will take it out regardless, but here comes Palafin. Wave Crash destroys Indeedee. Magnezone next. Oh, Terra Grass means it lives, but Volt Switch doesn't get the return thanks to the Light Screen. Glowbro versus Armarouge. Glowbro gets a Psychic boosted by Terrain and a Sludge Bomb off, but what's this expanding force in Psychic Terrain will Oko the Glowbro. Very impressive. Endure next to try to outspeed the Talonflame, but Flamethrower means Weak Armor isn't going to activate, so down it goes. Gapdos is outsped and burned, but still does well over half, but Roost means Talonflame will outlast Gapdos, and one last Flamethrower finishes off Magnezone. Great game with many small defining factors, but it's the Corviknight Clobbers that get their signature win of the season to move up to 5-1. Next up, let's go into another matchup where we had someone trying to break into the top echelon, but the Bouffalant just don't lose to the Agrons, turning them away with a convincing 5-0. Turn 1, Meowscarada does 81% with knockoff. Sheesh, but Rotom will get off the burn on the Banded Cat. Hippowdon tanks it next, doing more back with Helmet and Sand. Rain Time with Pelipper, but Hippo gets up rocks, Slowking into tank Pelipper, and Chilly Reception out into Hippo on Mew. The Meow 3 weathers in one turn. Pincurchin in next, Hippo heals up. EQ brings it low, and Eject Button out into the special attack boosted Iron Moth. Yikes! Rotom sacked Energy Ball. Sneasel forces that out into Pelipper. Slowking soaks up the Surf and U-turn, doing 41% to Basculin. Sheesh, Hippo in on Head Smash. Nice, Pelipper in and out thanks to Whirlwind, and Basculin back in only to self-KO on Wave Crash, 73% to Slowking. Oh my goodness. Tauros with Trailblaze on the Sandy Shocks. Hard swap into Hippo on Earthquake. Terra Grass Tauros Trailblaze does only 28%, so that's healed up. Hippo is a tank. Whirlwind out again into Meow. U-turn out as Hippo heals up again, but that lets Pelipper heals up too. Pelipper out into Pincurchin, which just goes down to rocks, so no more terrain. Slowking in on Pelipper. Hurricane confuses, but Chilly Reception does go off. Sandy Shocks into Volt Switch back out into Hippo. Whirlwind again into Iron Moth down down to a third. Excalibur comes in next on Overheat, takes 80%, gets the attack raise, but also Iron Moth out with an eject pack into Tauros, but Clear Amulet stops the Intimidate. More good item usage. That'll force in Pelipper to be sacked. Meowscarada in and low. Hippo tanks and Sand takes care of that. Last chance. Iron Moth in. Sneasel tanks the Energy Ball, then KOs the last two mons. That's a clean 5-0 for my Bouffalant. Next match, it's yet another team looking to breach into the upper echelon. It's the Incineroar taking on the Noctows. It's another huge upset. The Incineroar are the ones taking it 2-0. Tell me if you've heard this one before. Turn 1, burn. Cinderace burning Quillfish, but in return, it gets Toxic. Powerball misses into some chip from Barbarage. Ursaluna in on Spikes, and Toxic is up. It looks like no guts because Quillfish survives the Body Slam back. Second layer of Spikes up in exchange for Quillfish. Seems good. Gorilla in. Woodhammer KOs. Huge KO. Cinderace in. Scarf, Woodhammer KOs, huge KO. Okay, no more Mr. Nice Guy here. Toxtricity time, shift gear up, but Booster Iron treads out speeds, Terra Normal Toxtricity, knockoff, good read to take care of the Throat Spray, but the Follow-Up Rapid Spin doesn't KO, so Drain Punch restores some health for Toxtricity. Overdrive does nice damage to Dozo before finally going down. Lurantis in to finally defog those spikes away, but Salamon's time, less than half to Vaporeon, never mind. Wish up, Dondozo curses on Lurantis coming in, then a double Lycanroc reading Moltres. However, Terra Poison Moltres was safe, and even as rocks go up, that'll be a burnt Lycanroc. Where's the offense coming from now, Noctowls? Plenty more switching around, and Salamence has gotten Vaporeon low, but it hangs on with 1% to KO back with Ice Beam. Thank you to Rain. Lurantis to half from knockoff, but Synthesis up. Moltres does some more chip to Lycanroc, but lots of switching around. Vaporeon back in on Moltres, wishing up to full as Dozo does the same with Rust. Eventually, Leaf Storm into Terra Poison. Moltres does 26%, but it's a little too healthy, so Lurantis out again. Moltres heals up, gets off that burn to Vaporeon and roosts off some Surf. Oh, fishing for a freeze now, Vaporeon. Out to Dozo. Lurantis healthy again, misses Leaf Storm. So much switching, so much healing. Where's the breakthrough? Turn 50, Dondozo frozen by Ice Beam. Okay, can Lurantis break through now? 18% to Moltres, stays in, goes down to Flamethrower. Oh no, kid. Dozo walls forever now, or does it? Well, 24 turns later, and Lycanroc has KO'd itself with Life Orb Chip before Vaporeon finally brings it down 4% at a time thanks to lefties. But that's Rillaboom left in the back. Even Triple Protect won't save the Noctowls. Actually cost them a differential thanks to Recoil, and the Incineroar take it, a huge statement win for the comeback kids. Next up, the Calgary Corviknight defeat the Kanto Kinglers, and that's obvious. But the journey there, actually not so obvious or comfortable. Great performance on the Kinglers with a strange twist in prep. You're going to need to check out the Match of the Week, hosted by our very own Fruit Taco, as well as a special guest. This was a fun, tense battle. Go check this one out. Next match, the Route 1 Burbs keep chugging along here, a 3-0 win over the hapless Mudkips. Tinglu can protect from first impression, but CC does so much. Good luck with that. It'll be one layer into Spikes in exchange for Tinglu's life. Meloetta in under Gouge, tanking the Dracos easily. Staraptor brought low by Melo after some good switching. Raichu, though, will take care of Meloetta finally. Dragouge brought low, even as Terra Fairy. Slitherwing will take care of it. Very nice. Torkoal and Samurott bring each other low. Roaring Moon in to take care of that. Walking Wake does less than half to Hoopa, who one-shots Walking Wake back as expected. Of course, Slithering is back. First impression takes care of that. It's getting low, though, so Torkoal is sacked to Spikes, which lets in Orthworm on the Choice-Locked Fairy move revealed. It KOs Staraptor, then Raichu, and that's game. My son's Orthworm and Slithering. Good to see. Good 3-0 win for the Burbs. And finally, it's the Boulder Boulders keeping their playoffs hopes alive with a very close 1-0 win over the Steamrollers. Surprise, as Elf lead, taunt Clodsire, set up rocks, tank the outrage from Cyclozar, and then blow up. Yeah, it's another Boulders match. Rotom burns a Great Tusk, who knocks off the boots from Rotom. Then an overheat miss yet again from Chad. Jeez, Tusk out, then in again as Sliggoo comes in for the first time into a knockoff. That means after an Ice Spinner, even burned, cursed Sliggoo can't hack it. Unfortunate. Volcanion next. Its balloon is broken but takes minimal damage before wrecking the Tusk. In comes Abomasnow. Wonder what Terra it's going to be to avoid the fire move. Grass. O-code. Well, the snow's up at least. Articuno does half and Flamethrower does 99%. Jeez, down goes Volcanion finally. Enamorous revenges it. Wait, Enamorous wasn't just sacked. We're learning now. Kilowattrel in. Claude is the answer. Weather Ball. Maybe not. Well, the snow will end eventually, so just recover, right? Air/flinch. Air/flinch, then switch out to Rotom. Ah, but that's a trick. Nice spectacles, round friend. Rotom dodging Hydro Pump easy, but Claude will take 54% on the next turn. Sheesh. Rotom dodges another pump. Can these appliances hit their moves? Overheat connect, and it's 1v3. Air/the Rotom, tank player off, and Volt switch the Enamorous in Claude. Claude is locked in with the specs. One turn of toxic damage isn't enough, and 2 Air/s will do it. Great game from these two, but it's the Boulders on top here. That's what happened in week 6. You may have noticed some interesting things with the standings. We've got a lot of 4 and 5 win teams, so much so that actually our power rankings is full of only teams that are 4 and 2 or 5 and 1. Up at the top, it's our 2 5 and 1 teams, as we all expected. It's the Calgary Corviknight and the Corviknight Clobberers, as expected, of course. Wow, What a turnaround from previously when we had thought that the next 3 teams there, the Bouffalant, Wobbuffets, and Noctowls, were the cream of the crop, and here they are sitting down below those 5-1 teams that seemingly came out of nowhere. Interesting ordering there too that I'm sure we'll get into. And of course, at the bottom there, these Incineroar, Agrons, and Burbs at 6, 7, and 8, rounding out the top 8. All of them, once again, 4 and 2 or 5 and 1. Steve, I guess we should start off at the top there. The Corviknight and the Clobburst are only 5 and 1 teams. A couple more nice wins for them. Corviknight was a little bit close, but boy, their qualities of wins are just too impressive. And the Clobburst, as we said, finally get their statement win over the Wobbuffets. How about some love for these two who suddenly climb atop the power rankings?
Yeah, another key factor here is, of course, that they're both the 5 and 1 teams as opposed to all the other teams that have 2 losses at this point. So kind of definitely a step ahead. As such, of course, being clinches for the playoffs here. And, they both of these teams are really shining now. Calgary, with their second season in the main league, really getting into the hang of it, picking up, key wins we've talked about, of course, the win over the Bouffalant, getting, another win this week against the Kinglers, really looking solid. And, of course, very key for their rankings here, the win over the Clobburers, which for the longest time really weighed the Clobburers down. But as Calgary has seemed to do so well, that loss is looking more and more just like Calgary being that good. And the Clobburers, as you mentioned, finally get the chance to play another team within the top 8. And with a win, shoot way up and get up there all the way to number 2.
And of course, that doesn't mean that we can't talk about the next 3 teams who are still right there. Bouffalant, Wobbuffets, Noctowls, been clumped together basically all season, with the Corviknight in amongst there before making their way up, and the Clobburers jumping all of us suddenly. That 5-1 record really doing a lot there. I think we kind of agreed the Bouffalant, Wobbuffets, and Noctowls are all kind of there together. Bouffalant kind of earning their way back in after a win and a couple of losses from those other 2 teams there. Maybe the surprise here is the Noctowls all the way down to 5. Boy, they have one heck of a winning streak going on for quite a while there, but 2 losses in a row, plus the 2 before that were a little bit shaky. It leaves them to be a little bit lower. Talk about our 3 through 5, Steve.
Yeah, so the Noctowls dropping down to 5 really just comes down to, as you mentioned, they're on a little bit of a cold streak now with 2 losses. But the thing before that is the 2 weeks ahead of that, of course, going up against very tough teams in the Bouffalant and Calgary. They had some RNG that really helped out them seal some close games. First turn wake up and predicting the right line on a 50-50. So these results, are kind of shaking our confidence in the Noctowls. At first, those were wins. But now that they're starting to drop some of these games, they're starting to fall. I still, of course, have lots of confidence in the Noctowls. I would not be surprised, even if they stay this low-seeded, that they come into playoffs and they make it to the finals once again. But for now, our confidence in them is a little shaken. The Bouffalant and Wobbuffets, the Bouffalant picking up a win this week over the Agrons, another win over a top 8 team. As mentioned, the Bouffalant seem to always beat the Agrons, so really not a surprise there. And, picking up that win, as well as with the shaking fate in the Noctowls and the Wobbuffets taking a loss, enough to get the Bouffalant up to holding that 3 spot. And the Wobbuffets there in the middle feel a little more confident after the Wobbuffets have just recently beat the Noctowls, but again, losing to the Corviknight Clobbers. However, that now moves them up to the 2. So the Wobbuffets with losses to what are now the 2 and 3, with some wins over other teams in the top 8, in the Noctowls and the Burbs that are on the other 8. So 4 seems reasonable enough. And as mentioned, these teams are all close. These teams have all beat each other in a cycle and lost to one of the others. So very close, and, come playoffs, any of these rematches could go either way.
How would you like that for a 4v5 first round of the playoffs? Get 2 of these teams to match up? Oh my goodness. But of course, we should not discount those 3 teams just below them, especially look at that, the Incineroar climbing up to number 6. Not that far away from 3, 4, 5, actually, after a really nice win over the Noctowls. Agron slipping a little bit to 7, but still impressive enough. And the Burbs, of course, hanging in there. Actually, very nice differential among the 4 and 2 teams. I think enough for even to be the number 3 seed currently, not in power rankings, but in the actual standings. These 3 teams still pretty impressive. No reason to even really think about dropping any of them. But I think we definitely need to give some love to the Incineroar in particular. There's another signature win. I wonder if that will carry them as well this season, yeah?
Yeah, the Incineroar started off rough, 0-2, for a while, we in the middle of the season, we had talked about them, as that number 9 team, and then they eventually broke in and are now starting to rise. 4 wins in a row will do that. Of course, one of them coming over the Key Knock Owls, which was that big win to move them into consideration for moving up. Up until this point, they had just beaten teams that were outside of the top 8, but with that, we got a lot more confidence in them, enough so to move them up to number 6, even above a team they lost to in the Agrons. However, of course, we kind of value more the Incineroar's win over the Knocked Owls than we value the Agrons' win over the Incineroar, which has resulted in, of course, the Agrons kind of sliding down there to 7. And then, kind of, to me, a little bit separate, even though the Burbs do have, as you mentioned, the best differential of the 4 and 2 teams, the Burbs are also the only team on this ranking that don't have wins over some other team on the ranking. The Burbs have lost to the Agrons, have lost to the Wobbuffets, and all of their 4 wins come from teams missing from the power rankings. So they're kind of, to me, the outlier team that if they're matching up against any of these top teams, they're losing, but they've had an easier schedule and are, in general, a great player. So they're sitting there at 8. Of course, they also decided partway through the season to really embrace the Sun aspect of their team. They're getting some key pieces with Roaring Moon this week, Slitherwing. I know there's some other mons going for auction next week. And with all those mons finally coming together, will the Burbs be able to pull it all together and match up against and win against one of these of the other top 8 teams?
A little bit of wild card. Wouldn't be the first time we've seen them as the 8 suddenly come through and win a couple of key playoff matches. No surprises coming there. I guess there is one thing we should discuss before we go into not the schedule, but the playoff outlook, actually. We do unfortunately have one of our coaches who had to drop the Illyria Electabuzz. Their coach really could not make things work out, so they are going to drop from the league, and there are a couple of matches that thus we've already given the 3-0 to their opponent. And I say that in anticipation of talking about the playoffs, because on our list here, those marked with the star have clinched a playoff spot. So as we mentioned before, congratulations to the Calgary Corviknight and the Corviknight Clobbers for being the first teams to clinch. That's kind of crazy. It wasn't any of our old stable teams, not any of our big top 5, but the Corviknight and the Clobbers that clinched there first. And the Noctowls also, as they will be playing the Electabuzz later, will pick up a 4-foot win there and get their 5th win, which will also secure a playoff spot for them. Steve, usually it's pretty complicated when we talk about playoffs. We start to go into percentages and very specific things that need to happen. But actually, with so much clumping, and specifically within the top 8, it's relatively easy this time. So take a listen here to what Steve has to say, and I think you'll be able to see that the playoff picture, even with 2 weeks left, is pretty clear. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, it is. It is very well defined. So for the first step here, there are the 5 teams in the top 8 who have not clinched. All of them currently at 4 and 2, the Bouffalant, the Wobbuffets, the Incineroar, the Agrons, and the Burbs. The only way any of them don't make it is if there are 8 other teams that make it up to 5 wins while they lose out and stay at 4. So for that to happen, they would need all but themselves within the top 8 to win at least one more game while they lose out. In addition, the number 9 Boulders, currently at 4 and 3 after they get a forfeit win in week 8, would also need to win their week 7 match to get to their 5th win. So for any of these other 5 teams to clinch, all they need to do is win once in one of the next 2 weeks, or the Boulders to lose this upcoming week against the Agrons, or if neither of those happen and they do lose 2 of the next 2, as long as one other team also loses 2 of the next 2, they'll make it. In the case where there is a team in 8th place with 4 wins, so if one of these teams, if any of these 5 teams lose 2, that opens the door for other teams, specifically the Wooper Troopers and Kanto Kinglers, both of which have 2 wins currently. If they pick up wins in week 7 and week 8, and one of these other teams still have 4 wins, they will also get the chance to do play-in games. So, very close race here. It's still unclear at this point whether 4 or 5 wins are needed. 5 is, of course, a guarantee, as noted. 4 wins is possible. We'll need 5 wins, but it's not certain yet, and that'll be really a key factor here in the coming weeks.
Yeah, it's a little bit scary if you're playing another team within this top and you really need them to lose and you really need one more win. It could come down to the wire, but also could just be pretty simple. We'll see if the 4-win teams can get in or not, and if the Boulders will be part of that party or not. that's going to do it for us for the power rankings. That means we get to look at the Week 7 schedule. 2 weeks left. We're really coming up on it, Steve. And looking up there at the top, well, at least after playing several of the top teams, at least it gets a little bit easier for the Bouffalant, right?
Yeah, getting your matchup against the Incineroar, who are on a bit of a hot streak. That is definitely one of the matches of interest. Another match I'd like to point out is the Burbs and Clobberers. We've mentioned that the Burbs don't have any wins against other top 8 teams, and the Clobberers have just proven themselves to be at the top of those top 8 teams. So a really great chance for the Burbs here to kind of show what they have, or for the Clobberers to even further solidify their position on top.
And one that stands out for me as well, we talked about we just need the Boldors to lose Week 7, and all those other 4-win teams are guaranteed in some way, shape, or form. And the Agrons, of course, needing a nice bounce-back win. So Agrons Boulders should be a pretty good match here. I think 2 relatively even teams here, too. If the Agrons win, we're all celebrating for getting in the playoffs. But the Boulders win, we're suddenly a little bit of trouble, and the Boulders start celebrating, too. So this could be a lot of fun here in Week 7. Again, only 2 weeks left. We're right in the thick of it. Thank you to Steve for joining me. Thanks to all of you for joining us here, too. We'll see you back here for the Week 7 Power Rankings on the Wooper Club League.